Welcome to the Ultra Origin series, where we hear from runners who have recently finished their first ultra or completed a new distance. In these conversations, we celebrate regular people who are doing hard things. There's a lot we can learn from and be inspired by from people just like you. In this podcast episode, Austin Posey shares his inspiring journey of training for and completing his first 100-mile ultramarathon, the Blue Heron Hundreds in Alabama. As a firefighter, father of three, and husband, Austin discusses the challenges of balancing intense training with a busy life, his mental resilience during the race, and the emotional motivation drawn from honoring a loved one.
My pleasure. And since you reached out to me, I've listened to pretty much all of the episodes I could find. And it's really cool to hear everybody's unique story and how they get into different walks of life, different parts of the country or the world. So it's a cool thing you're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad that you were able to join. Let's just start off by having you tell us about yourself. Tell us where you're talking to us from and tell us a little bit about your journey getting into running. And then after we talk about how you kind of got into running, we'll start to talk about your first ultra experience. But I'd love to hear a little bit about you and how you got into moving one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. So I am 39 years old from Philadelphia, Mississippi, which is pretty much right in the middle of the state of Mississippi. I'm a captain at the fire department here in Philadelphia. You heard my daughter just then, married, have 3 kids. My daughter is the youngest. I'm just a regular dude, like just wife, 3 kids, actually. I'm a captain at the fire department. I sell insurance on the side and also have a few yards that I cut.
You're busy.
Just a regular guy, busy life, kids, activities, taking up time, which I know you want to talk about the training later, but it kind of makes me think about when I decided I wanted to do this race. I told my wife, of course, she was like, hey, you're very busy. How are you going to be able to train for it? And I kind of promised to her that I wouldn't take away time from her and the kids. So it was a lot of midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., getting up before work. Like I did, my long run was 30 miles, and I did it from like 12:30 until 6:30, whatever time it was in the morning. So when I was in high school, I played basketball and soccer, ran cross country. Didn't want to run cross country. I can't remember. I think it was the soccer coach that kind of made us do it. Didn't like a lot of kids. I didn't really like it. But as I got into my early 20s, I realized running was something you could always kind of come back to. Just even if it was 3 or 4 miles, 2 miles, whatever it was, you could just get out and go do it where it's pretty. So I kind of off and on ran for a while. But 3 years ago, I decided to do a local triathlon here in Philadelphia. It's not like a sprint. It's like the 28.5 bike and half-mile swim, 6-mile run. So pretty legit, not a Ironman, but pretty legit. So I did that, and that kind of got me more into the endurance world. I did CrossFit for 8 years. For some reason, I always enjoyed brutally hard. The workouts that everybody else hated were my favorites for some reason.
Yeah.
But after doing the triathlon, so I've done it 3 years in a row now. I wanted to break 3 hours on it. I hadn't been able to do that the first 2 years, broke 3 hours this year, so I was pretty pumped. Started training for this. I really decided last year that I was going to do this. I didn't really sign up or tell my wife until the beginning of this year, maybe March or something. So that's really when I started training. But before that, I was running, not a ton, maybe 25, 30 miles a week, something like that. And then it kind of progressed. I didn't have a coach. I did kind of have a training plan. I listened to Chad Wright's podcast, and I listened to a bunch of these people that have done similar things. And then on that Facebook thread, which of course some of this stuff on there you don't need to listen to, but some of it's good information. And I would just kind of pick and choose and kind of formulated my own plan pre-left. which is why I went back and posted what I did. But you saw was to try to give back to anybody on there that wanted my advice and anything. My advice is the best, but it did work for me. You know, as you well know, the mental aspect of doing something like this is, I would say, it's at least 70 to 80% of the battle is the mental stuff.
Absolutely. That's right.
Training went really well, I thought. I really kind of honed in on doing this exact race probably in April, but I knew before that I was going to do a race, and this was one of them that I was thinking of.
Can you tell us what the race is and the distance?
Yeah, so this race is called the Blue Heron Hundreds, and they do 100-mile, 100K, a 40-mile, and a marathon. Kind of do it all at the same time, same start time. What drew me to this one was several things, but like I said earlier, I'm from Philadelphia, Mississippi, right in the middle of Mississippi. And you may not have ever been in this area. There's no elevation to speak. So I didn't really want to get into going to the mountains somewhere, although I would love to do that for the views and the nature and everything. But I didn't want to do something like that. I wanted it to be relatively close to home. And this ended up being about 5 hours away. It was in Mooresville, Alabama, so North Alabama, flat, close to home. And this was a smaller event. Between all of the races, I would say it's probably maybe 100 people.
All across all those distances?
Across all the distances. Wow. 16 signed up for the 100-mile.
Oh, okay.
Those were things I wanted. This one just kind of stuck out to me. It kind of fit the criteria that I wanted. Although it was Labor Day weekend in North Alabama, so it's pretty hot.
And so you signed up to do the 100-miler. And what was the longest distance you had run before that?
Well, the longest run, that's the longest distance. That's 35 miles, but just run is 30.
Oh, okay.
I probably wouldn't advise taking the route I took. But as I said earlier, I got a lot of other things going on. Yeah. And I did the best I could with the time I had. And I knew that the mental aspect at some point was going to outweigh physical aspect.
Yeah.
And I felt good about being a mentally strong person. As you know, there's curveballs thrown and in races like this.
That's right.
No matter how strong you are mentally, sometimes you can overcome certain. And that's okay too, as long as you learn.
Yeah.
When I decided to do this race, this is something I don't think I'd mentioned you, but I had my first cousin's fiance. He's a big runner, and my aunt had been telling me that me and him needed to do a race together. He does a lot of marathons, faster guy, which I'm not a faster guy, so that wasn't something I really wanted to do. So when I decided to do this race, me and him talked about it, and he decided to do it. Unfortunately and very tragically, about 4 weeks before the race, he was in a drowning accident.
I'm so sorry.
So I think he would have done really good at things like this. He was a really good guy, and so I had added motivation. It was very unfortunate when shook me. I know it, my first cousin, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
So on my Facebook post, I don't think I put the picture on, but I had, like on my forearm right there, I had put his initials with the Sharpie when I did the race. And when I went, I got his bid up and his race t-shirt and took it back to my cousin. He ate it her. So it was some added motivation of that. And, it was tough to deal with.
It must have been tough just to continue training, even to consider going on and doing the event at all, I would almost think.
So, yeah, I definitely thought about that. So that was the beginning of August when he passed away. And so, 3, 4, 5 days later, whenever it was, I went to Mobile, Alabama to his services, talking to my cousin and the family and all. And the ride home, that's all I was thinking about was, should I do this? Or, is it going to be too sorry? The more I got to thinking about it, I got to thinking, like, what would he have wanted? What do I think he would have wanted? And I'm pretty sure that's what he would.
Yeah.
For me to finish the race, I think that would make him.
Yeah.
And getting his stuff and getting it to my cousin, I think that made her.
You sort of took it as an opportunity to help, became part of your motivation and part of a way to honor him through this run.
Because like I said, he's younger than me and he would have done fantastic at this, I think. I mean, he's done a few other ultras. He had never done 100-miler, but he had done, I think he might have done 50.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Did you have any family or anybody join you to help support you and crew you during this event?
So I have a wife and 3 kids. My oldest son, I have an aunt that lives about 2 hours away from the race in Birmingham, Alabama. And so he stayed with her. We dropped him off Friday when we were on the way. But my 3-year-old son and then my 10-month-old daughter, an 11-month-old daughter, and my wife, they were there.
Okay.
And so it was, the course was a 20-mile out and back. So you go 10 miles, come back, you can do that 5 times. Every 20 miles, you were back at the starting line. So I had like a pop-up tent with coolers and yoga mats and all that kind of stuff. So I would try to like text my wife when I was, 30 minutes away from being married, and she was there. That was good. I mean, as far as helping, she did the best she could, but having kids that she had other things going on. But It was good to have them there, especially later in the race. And, you start getting tired and mentally you start fading a little bit. It was good. And then definitely it was great to have them there when I finished.
Yeah. And did the race provide volunteers or their aid stations along the 10-mile out and back, 20-mile out and back?
They had one aid station halfway at mile 5.
Okay.
And then where you turn around, they had an aid station. So every 5 miles, and they had one at the starting line. So every 5 miles, but then halfway in between the 2 aid stations, they had an unmanned water. I thought they had a phenomenal setup. I'm sure bigger events have bigger setups, but they knocked it out of the park, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The people were really nice, really supportive. Like I said, it was a smaller, more personable feel too, which I really enjoyed that.
And so you must have brought your own nutrition, your own hydration.
Yeah. So as you're well aware of, I didn't want to put anything into my body that I had not trained with. Of course, over time, that kind of got a little squirrely on that plan. But yeah, I had a bunch of water that I brought. I wanted to drink the same kind of water that I had been drinking. Some Element and some other hydration type drinks that I had been drinking. And Uncrustables, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and bananas, different things like that I had trained with. I knew as the race went, though, I would need, like, they cooked burgers out there at one point. They had cheese quesadillas. I knew that I would have to eat some of that stuff. Funny thing is, in my normal day-to-day life, I can't tell you the last time I drank a soft drink.
Yeah.
About 2 or 3 in the morning, I stopped at an aid station. They had a Mountain Dew, and I was just like,
I bet it was magical.
oh, it was very new. And I told my wife about it. She likes Mountain Dews, and she was like, I can't believe it. But yes, it was very new.
What kind of strategy did you have in terms of keeping up with your intake of calories? Did you have a plan to make sure that you were always eating or eating enough?
I had a loose plan. A lot of this stuff, I just kind of winged it, figured it out on the fly, but I knew foot care, hydration, and nutrition. I didn't want to fall behind on any of that. I was shooting for roughly 300 to 400 calories per hour with about 60 to 80 grams of carbs. Is that the right number? I really, based on the stuff I've read, that seemed like a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
I did really well with that for a while, and then it gets laid out there, and the hallucinations are very real, and you lose track of eating and time and everything.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I did really well at first, and then it just kind of, it gets to a point for me where it's just like, figure something out, eat something, and
What
quesadillas.
was the thing that you felt like was it became a challenge? Like, did you not like the flavor of that food anymore? Could you not keep it down? What was not working so well that you needed to try to find an alternative for?
The challenge on the food, yeah, kind of what you're saying was just like the first 3 or 4 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches were great.
Yeah.
The burger was great, but there was only one chance to get a burger. They cooked them one time and I got one, and everything would change. The first few quesadillas were great, and then just for me, it got to a point where I was getting tired and I didn't want to eat, but I did keep eating.
Yeah, right.
But as far as challenges go, the biggest challenge for me was, without a doubt, mile 88, my right calf started cramping.
Oh, okay.
And so this would have been about 9:30 a.m. Sunday, give or take. Saturday, it wasn't super hot. In the South is crazy. 85 degrees with a high percent of humidity is really hot.
Yeah.
But this time of year, that's not super hot. Sunday, it started early and it was hot.
Okay.
My right calf started cramping really bad, like really bad. And to the point where I was basically just dragging my right leg, hobbling. And I read your email, and it was like, one of the questions said, what was your favorite part of the race?
Yeah.
It was actually this part. This was my favorite part. This was why I wanted to do this. I wanted the challenge. I wanted to have to earn something. I wanted the personal growth. There it was. I found it at mile 88. You know, everything I wanted was right there. And really and truthfully, that is what I wanted. It was a 32-hour cutoff. I finished with 49 minutes left. Out of the people who finished, I was the last one to finish, which didn't matter to me. I just wanted to finish.
Yeah.
I really felt like I earned. You know, it's been a while since I felt like I really pushed myself to earn something, and I did. So,
Well, that's a long way to go with having a cramping calf. Do you know why your leg was cramping up? Got to the bottom of that?
I don't really know, and it still is not 100%, which I don't think it's anything seriously wrong with it.
Sure.
I think it's just, letting out of the cramp. Other than maybe, sodium intake just wasn't where I wanted it to be or where I needed it to be.
Yeah. What was your electrolyte replacement strategy? What were you doing in the run?
I had some like liquid IV packs that I used.
Were you using that regularly through the run or just occasionally as needed?
At first as needed, but as you know, doing a race like this, the first, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles, whatever it is, you're like, oh, I'm fresh. But as you well know too, what you're doing right then is setting yourself up for what's going to be going on later.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so I think if I had to pinpoint it, I would say probably that, just kind of early in the race, not thinking I needed it, because I didn't need it then, but it obviously led to a point where.
Yeah. Sometimes those sorts of things, you need, even when you're feeling good and you don't think you need to eat or you don't think you need to have electrolytes, if you're almost setting yourself up for some kind of problem down the road, digging a hole that you're going to have to later climb out of. Whereas if you can sort of stay on top of it early, hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes well, that you're going to stay ahead of any kind of problems that might happen later on. So but that's the challenge, is how do you eat when you don't want to eat, or drink electrolytes when you don't want to, just because you're trying to be proactive. That's also part of the mental game, I think. How do you be strategic in how you're executing your plan?
I think somebody like yourself who's done however many of these you've done, I think the more you do it, you probably get better with how you need to do certain things, when you need to do certain things. And it's funny because my wife, she kind of thought this was going to be a one and done type thing. And I didn't really know when I signed up for it if I wanted to go head first into this world. And I'm still not really sure that that's something I want to do. But I'm definitely doing another one because of everything we're talking about. Like, I did this wrong, I did this wrong, I did this wrong. Let me do it with doing those things right and see. I think experience, as with anything else.
Yeah, they're all learning experiences. Every time you go out there, you learn something new. And even when you've done quite a few of them, you'll still make a mistake somewhere because you forgot something, or you couldn't have predicted, that's going to just throw a little bit of a wrench in it. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge to try to be as ready as you can, but yet at the same time be willing to adapt to the situation and make changes.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it went really good, though, all things considered. Finish is a finish, and that was my goal. I had a time goal, but I didn't know if it was possible. I wanted to beat 24 hours, but I didn't have any idea if that's possible. And it was not possible on that day. Maybe the next time that you would be able to.
You made the comment that when you were training that you did a lot of nighttime running so that you could save the time for your family. Did that help you in the nighttime running of the section? Were you comfortable running at night?
Yes, I was comfortable at night. So I wanted to run at a lot of different times of the day. Summertime in Mississippi at 1:00 in the afternoon is difficult, but I even ran at that time. At the fire station, obviously being a firefighter, physical fitness is something, if you want to go run, as long as we don't get called out, if you want to go run 10 or 15 miles, everybody's all for it. I could run 2-a-days at the fire station. I'd get running in the morning, get running in the afternoon. And then when I was home, a lot of times I would get up at 2 or 3 in the morning and go run 15 or 20 miles or something. Ironically, though, the one time of day that I did not run was pretty much from like 7 at night until midnight. And that was when it got tough. And I don't know if it was just coincidence or if there was something to that, but the running at 1, 2, 3 in the morning was there was problems. I'm not going to say there was no problems. Sure. 5 or 6 mates that I'm not sure if they were there or not. Other things, but running with the headlamp at night wasn't an issue really. So the course was like, it was a wildlife refuge, and it was all old Jeep trails. So it was, some parts on it was about as wide as the vehicle. Other parts was still that wide, but in between the tire tracks, it was kind of all up in grass. So staying an old course, it was a pretty simple course. You'd have had to try hard to get off course or get lost or something. Okay. It wasn't a single track or anything. Some parts of it, you may not have even needed a headlamp. Like the light of the moon, you could have pretty much seen the track. But yeah, the running that night wasn't great.
But the section from 7 p.m. until midnight was surprisingly hard for you, or there was something that made that a challenge. Can you talk a little bit about that low spot and how you experienced it, and did you do something to try to get yourself out of it?
So yeah, the the low for me probably started when the sun went down, 7:30, whatever time it was. That would have been probably about mile 50-ish.
Okay.
So probably more so than the timing. I think it was a coincidence that it happened at the time I had not ran that. 50 miles is 20 miles further than I had ever run.
Mm-hmm.
The sun's going down, from doing this. The sun gives you a little bit of that extra energy.
Sure does.
Plus, at that point, the hydration stuff from earlier may have been starting to rear its head. I think it was more of that than anything. So when I finished that 20-mile lap, had finished 60 miles, and it's 8:45 at night, maybe 9 o'clock, somewhere in there. And my wife and 2 youngest kids were there, and that was when I ate the hamburger. I wanted to visit with them. This was a crucial mistake I made. Sat down, changed my socks and shoes, ate my hamburger, visited with them. Before I know it, I had sat there about 45 minutes. And I think that was really the start of, which, at that point, 60 miles in, I was tired. My body was tired. It was time to start getting tired, but I needed to do other things to help myself out.
Yeah.
Mentally talking to my family helped out a lot. Physically, sitting there in that chair did not help out a lot.
Right.
So that was kind of the beginning of it get hard. And
was it tough to get up out of that chair? Was that why?
It wasn't. It was hard to get moving. It wasn't hard to get out of the chair, but when I got back moving, it took probably 6 or 7 miles before I could start running again. And mentally, I knew that my wife and kids weren't going to be there when I finished mile 80, because that was going to be at like 3:30, 4 in the morning, and every time it was.
Yeah.
So mentally, it was kind of that, I'm not going to see them until I finish. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm so far away from finishing at this point.
Yeah.
And then, they'll packing up, loading in the car, I'm out to leave. It was a tough spot right then, which I knew that I needed to get out of the chair and just start back moving. I did that. And, once I got back going and they were gone, I was able to, in my mind, okay, all right, everything's back the way it needs to be now. Let's just keep moving.
Yeah.
Something I thought about a lot during that race is listening to Chad Wright stuff. He's talking about constant forward motion in races like this. And that was from that point forward, because when I finished the 80 miles, they weren't there. So that break was like change socks, change shoes, refill liquids, and grab a couple of sandwiches. And
they just get right back out there, huh?
Right. From 60 until the end, mentally, I was good at that point.
Yeah.
It was tough. No doubt. It was tough, but like I said earlier, that's why I wanted to be.
Yeah.
I wanted the child.
And then in that last 20-mile out and back, that's when your calf started to cramp up, when you were on your way out towards the turnaround.
Right.
Yeah.
So the course was, you ran along the Tennessee River. So I had about 8 miles into it. You run along the river, and then you would take a right and go away from the river. And right about the time I took that right is when it started. They had a water cooler right there. And so naturally people were coming back past me, because there were 16 people that signed up to the 100-miler and only 7 finished. So all the other races at this point are over.
Yeah. Some
of these people at Art, so they're basically like 3 or 4 people still on the course, And so I see the last few people, and I know what shape I'm in, and they're like, of course, they're 90 miles in, so they're doing their best to run, but they're doing way better than I'm doing at that point. So then I go on to get to the turnaround, and there's a guy sitting there at the aid station. And of course, at this point, they're starting to pack up because I'm the last person,
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something to the extent of heck of a try or something like that.
It's not over yet.
So yeah, that's basically what I was thinking.
Mm.
This would have been at like 10:30 in the morning or so, like 10 miles left after I turned around. He thought the cutoff was 12.
Oh, okay.
And so he was, with what he said, he was very much right, because there was no way I could have got that 10 miles in a half. But when he said that, I was like, I'm pretty sure it's 32 hours. It was on the email I got, and he said, well, I was drinking some pickle juice and some other stuff. So he called, he clarified, and he apologized. No big deal, but
Yeah.
turning around right there was a definite bright spot for me, because even though I still got 10 miles, now I'm like, all right, it's the last time I'm doing all this stuff. We got back to the beginning. Seemed like it took forever, and I was worried at the pace I was going. Like, did I have enough time? I had called my wife and was like, I'm not going to quit, but I'm just concerned that I'm not going to have enough time. I finished with 49 minutes left, but as you know, 49 minutes is not a ton of time.
That's right.
Most
Yeah.
people are like, oh, you probably do 4 or 5 miles in that. Well, not a top.
Right. Were you having had the pickle juice at the turnaround and whatever else you were consuming, were you able to get the cramping under control so that you maybe is more comfortable towards the end, or how did that go?
It made it more manageable.
Yeah. Okay.
The guy that was there at the aid station, he gave me about 10 ounces of pickle juice, and there was some table salt sitting there, and I just kind of ducked some of that in the pickle juice, chugged it, and then made an electrolyte drink, chugged it. And if he kind of walked with me maybe a 1/10 of a mile or 2/10 of a mile, he was talking to me, and he had done several 100-milers himself. He said that he had learned from a couple of older guys doing 100-milers. He was talking to me about walking, using certain muscle groups when you're walking. It was like, try sliding your feet, because it was like a crushed gravel kind of on the road. That was a big gauge.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, I did that to probably a mile. And between that and the pickle juice, it made it where I could continue.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, in running these events, there's a lot of walking. So between running and walking or hiking, you're going to be using different muscle groups. But even like specifically trying to engage different muscles by doing a different kind of movement, sliding the feet, that's a really cool strategy to take the pressure off the muscles that are feeling it from the running and the walking or whatever. Yeah,
Right.
that's pretty good insight you got there from that old timer who helped you out.
I told him, because by the time I finished, he was already back at the starting line. And I walked up to him, and I was like, and I messaged him on Facebook and thanked you again. I was like, between that little tidbit of information and the pickle juice and all, you helped me out tremendously.
So then you got back to the finish, and your family was there to see you come across the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for you to complete this thing and come to the finish line?
Honestly, it was awesome. It was surreal. Like, I told my wife earlier, because she knew I was going to do this with you, and I was like, it seems like, it almost seems like I didn't really do that. I feel like I don't remember a big portion of the race, just from maybe lack of sleep or whatever reason. But I remember pretty vividly those last 10 or 12 miles. And so them being there was awesome. Absolutely exhausted. They brought a chair up right across the finish line. I sat down. That's probably a mistake. Then having to get up, and I felt bad because I got in the car and my wife was like loading all the stuff up. She helped so much.
Yeah.
And, I definitely couldn't have done it without her for sure. But yeah, it was an awesome feeling. I don't really know what I expected the feeling to feel like, but it was awesome.
Yeah, it's 100 miles is a really long way to go, and especially to do something on a out and back where you're constantly like you to leave the starting line again to go out and do another 20-mile loop takes a lot of fortitude to get back out there and test yourself. And like you said, you got to experience that really tough section with the cramping and really forcing yourself into a difficult situation. So, I mean, I can imagine you would feel fairly proud of the accomplishment and
Well,
having the training, all the training and everything you did to build up to this. Yeah, it's an achievement that very few people will ever get to see. And you did it and survived and did it pretty well.
I appreciate that. I think it was, I think everything went really good, honestly. I mean, as good as you could hope for
Yeah.
doing something like this. Like I said earlier, I have always felt like a mentally strong person. And, I was never nervous about the race. Like, I thought the night before I wouldn't sleep, and I didn't sleep enough, but I felt like I wouldn't be able to sleep, and I'd be thinking about all this stuff. I think probably next time I will be like that because I didn't know really what to expect. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, it's a simple task. It's a hard task, but it's simple. Like,
Right.
you go out there and you don't stop until you do 5 laps. In my case,
Yeah.
it's not easy at all, but it's simple.
What do you think some of the things you've learned from this first 100 that you will take with you to the next ultra that you run? What learnings have you come away with?
Time on the feet. So I had obviously heard that from a lot of people, and I mean, that is the biggest thing. Like, walk more in your training. I didn't do that. I was the person, in my mind, I was wishing to go out there and run 100 miles,
Yeah.
all 100.
Very few people have that ability to actually run all of it.
I guess I'm bored. He didn't thought that was going to
Well, I
work
mean,
out.
we do talk about running 100 miles. Everybody talks about, they use the verb running, even though with experience you learn that running is just a part of it. There's so many other modes of movement that you'll employ, including walking, and there's no shame at all.
There's no shame at all in that.
That's right.
A lot of that is just the mindset of, you hear people say all the time, like, I will crawl across the finish line. Hopefully nobody has to, but I'm sure somebody has at some point.
Yeah.
But to me, at least, it's more about that mindset of I'm willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And sometimes, unfortunately, people sustain more serious injuries than a calf hernia. You can't finish due to some of those things. And that's completely understandable. Those people, I'm sure, have the mindset of, I will finish by all means.
That's right.
But you don't want to hurt yourself worse by trying to finish something. There are other 100-mile races you can sign up for. Funny that we were talking about running 100 miles. I've only had one person ask me since I finished, how many did I actually run? One person asked me. You can't go out there and walk all of them because you will not make time cut
That's
off.
right. Yeah.
The whole experience was awesome. I would suggest to anybody listening to this that's considering doing anything, do it. Just sign up. When you sign up, in my opinion, that's one of the hardest things to do is because that's when you're really committing to doing it.
Yeah.
I was the guy watching the documentaries on YouTube and thinking like, that's all. Well, you can think all this stuff, but when you hit submit and you sign up, that makes it real. It takes a lot of courage to be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
Signing up, that is. And then just make your plan according to what you can do. A couple of training plans I had looked at were like, Monday do this, Tuesday do this, so forth and so on. I can't commit to this day being able to do this. So I looked at a bunch of different training plans and I just kind of formulated what would work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think weekly mileage is that, and time on feet, to me, are the two most important. Get you some long runs in throughout the week, maybe back-to-back long runs, but weekly mileage.
Yeah. So important to teach your body to move when tired, to teach your feet to continue to move on when they hurt. The lower extremities take such a beating during these things. Even on a flat course, sometimes the flatter, the more runnable something is, that almost can be more challenging because there's something about going uphill and downhill that changes the muscle groups that you're using. It kind of helps to break things up a little bit. But when it's a constant similarity of movement over those many hours, I think you probably learned a good thing about the time on feet training.
I would agree with what you were saying, because the flatter, yeah, in theory, that's going to be easier than the elevation gain, and that may be. But your gait does not change the whole time. And that's kind of what you were saying, you know, going up and down, you're using different muscles, and, you know, nothing changes the flatter it is. I mean, I think my wife said she saw it was like 250 feet of elevation going at this course. So
That's
as flat as it can be.
May as well be zero.
Right.
That's unbelievable. I'm curious to know afterwards how your recovery went, how you felt, and how long did it take you to feel good again? Yeah, tell us a little bit about that aftermath.
So tomorrow will be 3 weeks since I did it. Still not 100%.
Mm-hmm.
The first 3 or 4 days, I had a bamboo walking stick around the house, and my oldest son, he's 10, put my bucket hat on, and he got my medal and my belt buckle, and he was like, he had the walking stick. Look at me, I'm daddy, I ran 100 miles.
I gotta love it.
First 3 or 4 days was brutal. Everything I read was like Epsom salt baths. Well, they don't tell you how to get out of the bathtub when you can't use your left legs. So, yeah, it was that part of it too, was a learning experience, you know. It went good and it's still going good. I tried to run one time since, and about a quarter mile into it, I was just thought my body's not quite ready.
Yeah, it's just not happening.
The bottom of my feet still are, I didn't have any blisters to speak of, but the bottom of my feet just, I guess, just they got numb and whatever, and they're still not 100%. I feel way better now. Each day I feel better. But yeah, the first few days were absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, the first night I had to call my wife in the middle of the night. We were at my aunt's house. I had said that earlier. We stopped there when my son was, and we spent the nights. Me and her were in 2 different bedrooms. About 1 in the morning, I had to call her. I said, I got to use the bathroom, but I can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
That part of it is difficult, but I knew that was going to happen. And I didn't know to what extent, but you learn. Yeah, things are starting to feel better. Last year, I hyperextended my right knee.
Okay.
I did that triathlon in July, but basically for 6 months, with the exception of the triathlon, I just kind of forced myself to do that because I had already signed up. Till almost Thanksgiving, I didn't run. And so I was thinking something was really wrong with my knee. There was something wrong with it, but I was thinking like torn ligaments or something. I got an MRI done, and it ended up, it wasn't anything very serious, but they had to give me an injection in my knee. So the reason I said that is currently my knee is not quite 100%, but it's in a different spot.
Yeah.
It's something I'm going to monitor over the next couple of weeks and just see how that goes.
Yeah, listen to your body.
Yes, definitely.
I'm imagining a 10-year-old little boy is going to have memories his whole life of the time that his dad ran 100 miles. That's indelible in his memory, and I'm sure he's so proud of you. And if your younger kids were old enough, they would be proud of you too.
Yeah, I think, that's when I did the first triathlon, it's like I said, it's a local triathlon. So a lot of people around here have done it. And I wanted to do it just so as my kids got older, they could say, I wanted to do it for myself, but also wanted to do it for them to know that I do it.
Yeah.
And are you a father?
I do. I have a 21-year-old daughter. Yes.
And so you can relate to wanting to do stuff
Yeah.
for your kids to realize you did certain things. And that's, it's part of it. Like you want to pass on certain things, and I don't know if work ethic or whatever may come at this to them, but it was funny because I've done a couple of half marathons. Excuse me. I've done a couple of half marathons before. And the first one I did when I finished, my oldest son, I think he was 8 at the time, I gave him the medal. He thought it was cool, and I didn't particularly care to keep. So I gave it to him, and he has it hanging up in his room. He thought it was cool. Well, when he saw the belt buckle, he was like, Eddie, can I have that too? It's a pretty cool belt buckle, I thought. And when I posted it on that Facebook page that you saw, so many people were commenting on it. I guess a lot of people feel like this one was really pretty looking.
Yeah.
It had like the bird on it, the blue hair bird, and then you had like running shoes on. Looked pretty cool. But yeah, my son might. He may get it one day, but not her.
Yeah. Well, Austin, thank you so much for sharing your story and telling us about your experience running your first 100-miler. And I have no doubt that you'll be doing more long distance of things and seeing how all education can be used to benefit you, and see how you can do it differently, maybe better, but just certainly differently down the road. Before we go, is there anything else you'd like to share that we may not have covered?
We kind of touched on it, but for anybody out there considering doing anything like this, sign up. You never know how it's going to go that day. You can't plan for everything. You can plan for a lot of stuff, but if we all wait until we're ready to do it, then you may not ever do it because you may not ever feel like you're ready. And tomorrow's not promised for any of us, so go for it. Don't be scared to do hard things you want. Go for it. That's right. What I would say to everybody. I appreciate you having me on. I've listened to most of the episodes, and I feel like what you're doing is a good thing. I hope if anybody learns something from this, then great. It'll be worth the hours.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your time. It was really good to get to know you. Thank you for joining us, Austin. It was great to meet you and hear your story. If you've recently finished your first ultra or recently completed a major new distance and would like to share your story here in this series, go to honoredendurance.com and click on Ultra Origins at the top of the page. Thank you for watching. I look forward to sharing more Ultra Origin stories with you.